Hello, guys, and welcome to Oddspedia Premier League Matchday 17th. Now starts the madness of Christmas in the UK with so many games, a lot of football, starting, for instance, with Liverpool, Man United, and two English teams, Tom, drop from Europe. Newcastle and Man United say goodbye to European competitions.
Yeah, interesting. It's very rare that two English teams drop at this stage of the European Cup, but I think Man United were probably the worst team in their groups. That seemed fair enough. They made far too many errors across the match days. And as for Newcastle United, I think it was a case of bad luck, really, for them. If they'd have had more players fit, less games over the last few weeks, a better call in the Paris Saint-Germain game with the handball, and better luck in the game last night, maybe things would have been different. But there you go. The coefficient is ruined.
Indeed, next year the leagues are fighting for the having 5 teams in the Champions League, depending on this coefficient. And talking about the Premier League, of course, we have a new leader. We have to talk about Liverpool. So, guys, enjoy with us the Premier League show. Don't forget to press the like, subscribe, and now let's go on with the show. Or 91 is telling you Tom Rennie is my favorite tipster. So let's see how many greens Tom has this weekend. Here, by the way, if you are looking for a bookmaker to sign up with, we have an exclusive offer with 1xBet. Get 130% using our promo code. Well, Tom, on Friday starts this match day 17 with Nottingham Forest, Tottenham Hotspur. Tottenham finally bounced back, took advantage of a tired Newcastle and beat them 4-1. Even Richarlison scored some goals. I was fascinated by the way Richarlison celebrated the goals. He had just to tap in, especially the first one, and he didn't even look at Son, who made the whole goal by himself. This is good teamwork by Richarlison. Now Tottenham going to Nottingham, Tom. Forest, they are in a bad situation, closer to the relegation spots. Only 1 point in the last 5 games.
Yeah, bad times for Nottingham Forest. Real bad times. And that point coming against Wolverhampton Wanderers in their last game. 4 straight defeats before that, including a thumping at Fulham in midweek. And I'm surprised. I've got to tell you, I'm surprised about Nottingham Forest. I really thought their home form would get them over the line. And in terms of injuries, we're not on a huge list like Spurs or Newcastle or Man United, for example. Awoniyi is very significant, the centre-forward being missing. But beyond that, there's no one of particular note, and there's not a great deal of players missing. So the balance they had in midfield and going forward and defensively all seems to have gone. The confidence to win games at home seems to have gone. And I don't know how Steve Cooper gets that back. It's his job to do so, and he has previously been able to do so. But a loss in this game, another loss in the next game, another one on Boxing Day. I'd be amazed if Steve Cooper remains Nottingham Forest manager come New Year's Day, because this can't continue. The investment has been gargantuan from Nottingham Forest during their time in the Premier League, in terms of amount of players as well as money spent. And I think the owner, who infamously threw his ID pass to the Fulham game last week into a bush in a rage after losing at Craven Cottage, I think he wants some sort of improvement on his investment. I don't think they're talking about top 10. I think they're talking about 5 to 6 more points, but 5 to 6 more points right now would make the difference between 16th and 10th. And that is huge right now in this margins Premier League. So it's a huge game for Nottingham Forest. They go about it by getting on the front foot, trying to attack and trying to score goals with Hudson-Odoi and Gibbs-White and Elanga. Trouble for them is they're probably going to be behind Chris Wood, who's not as mobile as Awoniyi, but still, lots of good creative players. I think defensively they look weak, and I think all the goalkeepers they have used this season, Vlachodimos, as I've been reliably informed, you pronounce his name, and Matt Turner, both been pretty awful this season, and lots of goals conceded doesn't bode well. I think 28 conceded is really poor. For Tottenham, almost impossible to predict, right? Last week, I thought they would thrash West Ham, and they lost it. I thought that Newcastle might squeak out a tight win, and they went on to win comfortably. So tough to predict them right now because of the amount of players that have been missing. It's almost like the team of the first 10 weeks is gone. Currently, they have gone because no James Maddison. You can't play in that way. Son has massively stepped up. Kulusevski has massively stepped up. And even that misery that is Richarlison, who you spoke about, scoring a couple of goals. It's really important 4 or 5 players get 10 to 15 goals for Tottenham, because there isn't going to be someone scoring 25 to 30 this year. And that's a key differential in their season. So I think in this particular game, what you look at is recent results. And what you look at is both teams scoring. Tottenham Hotspur 4-1, 2-1. 3-3, 1-2, 2-1. Wolverhampton Wanderers 1-1, 2-1. There's a 3-2. There's a 2-1. Only one of their last 5 games, Wolves, have they failed to score in. That was the thrashing at Fulham. So both teams to score is really high on the agenda here. There's 2 scorelines I fancy. Sadly, it isn't a Forest win. Tottenham win and both teams to score brings you in at the magic 3 on the decimals. That's 2-1. Any double your money bet is what I'm looking for here. Nothing too extravagant, but always something that doubles your money. So that is nice. Tottenham win, both teams to score. I've told you the recent games. You've got to think that Spurs are going to score in this game. And I think they could outgun and outscore Forest. I wouldn't discount the draw, because it's always good odds to draw. But draw on both teams to score brings you in at 5. That's 4-1. I like that a lot. Tottenham win an over 3.5 goals brings you slightly higher at 4, which is really, really nice. And I haven't got the odds on this one. But if you're looking for an individual player, and I don't normally do individual players, but the form of Son right now is terrific. Look at Tottenham to win or Son to score and assist, a double whammy in this game. You normally get something like that at around about 5-1, 6-1. The form Son is in right now, I think there's money in that.
He was brilliant indeed against Newcastle. We have Ian agreeing with you. Tottenham and both teams to score. Also Anurag, both teams to score. Tottenham to score on both halves. And Bonjobu also thinks Forest will be in the score sheet. Next game on Saturday, Bournemouth, Luton Town. What a run for Bournemouth. Heroic victory in Old Trafford. 4 victories and 1 draw in the last 5. Hats off for Iraola, your divorced man coming to your house on a Sunday afternoon. Now he's doing brilliant things with Bournemouth. Let's see if they beat Luton Town. But we know that Luton, they don't get thrashed. They put a fight even against Man City, even against Arsenal. The odds for Bournemouth to win, they are so low, though. 1.5, I think, is too low.
Yeah, but when you're in form like this, a lot of people are going to be lumping on Bournemouth this weekend, and they have been really, really impressive. I think that they have unleashed Dominic Solanke. I feel like we speak about him every week on this show, but he's such a good player. The way he holds the ball up, the way he spins in behind, the goals that he scores. You look at the form of Tavernier. I think he's really stepped up in recent weeks. There may be over-aggressive at times. I think Marcos Senesi has improved in central defence. You know, there's lots of really big performers right now for Bournemouth. And a lot of credit to Andoni Iraola, who is bringing a bit of the flair that it was hoped he would bring to Bournemouth after a rough 10 weeks, when there was some talk, if he didn't win a game 2 or 3 games ago, he'd be sacked as Bournemouth manager. And now, once again, he's being talked about as one of the highly rated coaches in European football. It doesn't help that he looks like a divorced uncle at a wedding hoping to meet a bridesmaid. Like, it doesn't help like he looks like the miserable guy you call from IT to fix your computer, right? It doesn't help. It doesn't help him. It doesn't look like he looks like a supply teacher who's there for the day and really teaches music, but has been brought to an inner city school to teach maths. Like, it doesn't help him. It doesn't. I mean, you would have thought he's got Premier League money now, so get a stylist or dress like an adult. But anyway, he dresses like a boy at a wedding, and that's fine. But the football is good. For Luton Town, you're absolutely right to pick out their results because they are always in the match. And you can almost tell by the nerves around some of the clubs in the Premier League right now. Nottingham Forest, maybe even Chelsea, Everton with their point deduction. There are teams that are looking over their shoulder, Wolverhampton Wanderers, and thinking, God, Luton don't get beaten by many, do they? That's a concern. And look, it's 3 defeats in a row, right? It's 1 win in 5. So I still think they'll get relegated. But I think they've impressed us all with their ability to hang in games. And look at the fixtures they have had as well. The set of games they have had recently, last 2 specifically, Man City and Arsenal at home. They pushed them real hard and could have and maybe should have got something out of both of those games. That being said, I can't see them winning here. I think you've got to go with the form book and look at Bournemouth. I think it's going to be tight, as a lot of Luton games are. So I'll go quite conservative here and bring you in just under the threshold. But I do think the timing of your bet here could be crucial. Bournemouth to win in a group bet. 1-0, 2-0, 2-1. Tight victories for Bournemouth, as so many Luton losses have been, brings you in at 2.88. I think that'll come to 2-1 by the time you put the bet on this weekend. So certainly look at that market. I don't see many goals, Bournemouth and under 3.5 brings you in again at a not particularly impressive 2.38, but I quite like it. I think that's a likely scoreline. And I wouldn't be surprised here if nothing had happened by the halftime whistle and Bournemouth come on strong as the game goes on. You've seen it in the last couple of weeks that Luton tend to fade, and Bournemouth, as they showed at Old Trafford, have grown. Halftime score, 0-0. 3.25. After that, you can double that with a Bournemouth win, should you so wish. Brings you really high, but 3.25 is always a number I take.
Anurag is asking you if a double chance for Luton will be a risk worth taking.
I just still haven't seen Luton win enough games of football to put money on Luton winning. They still, despite impressing us, have won 2 games and have lost 11. So there's none of my money going on Luton to win anytime soon.
Well, Tom, talking about Iraola and his look, we always speak with Álvaro in our Odds on La Liga about Cádiz manager. He looks also like a divorced guy going to the alcohol shop and just drinking 1 bottle of whiskey after every game because he's tortured about his job and he's not happy about his life.
She's taking the kids. She's taken the kids.
Exactly. Not enjoying his Sunday afternoon roast or whatever, but maybe they are friends, Iraola and Sergio. Well, next game, Tom, Chelsea, Sheffield United. Chelsea's season has been awful. I think we are talking a lot about Man United, but no one talks really about Chelsea. 12 in the standings after all the money they've spent, 11 points away from the European spots. Most of the signings are a meme. They lost to Everton, they lost to United, only 1 victory in the last 5 games. I guess is the time for them to beat Sheffield United, although finally they got a victory against Brentford after changing manager.
This is unbearably tricky because I've got a lot of things right this year. We can all agree I've done okay this year, some really good bets, but I tell you what I've not done well is Chelsea. I don't know. I just don't know. They're horrible to bet on because we think these players are better than they are because of the money spent. We think Pochettino is a good manager because he is, but is he this manager who's going to be able to get this gelatinous blob of a team into something that makes sense? Or is he someone that comes in to a half-established team and puts them slightly further up the ladder? I don't know what he is and whether it's the right fit. But you're right to point out that we have given Man United some serious stick, but Man United at least have been in the conversation. I think the reason we've not spoken about Chelsea is nothing's happening. Like, it's not a case of, they get to 6th and then lose a big game, or they're in the Champions League but have failed. They're relative successes compared to Chelsea. Chelsea are doing nothing. They're just doing nothing of it. It's 1 win in 5. We're nearly at the halfway point of the season. They've won 5 games. Their loss at Everton last week, which to be fair, we did get right, was not a surprise. Everton win to 0. It's what we predicted and exactly what happened because, of course, it was going to happen. Look, I think Chelsea are a really good mid-table Premier League team, lower mid-table team. If Chelsea were Wolverhampton Wanderers, we would say, yeah, good performers in there. They're able to pick up a good result against a big team. Away from home, they might struggle because there's a bunch of young players and experienced players. But that's it, really. I mean, it's 1 home win in 5. It's 2 home wins all season. One of those home wins was last time out against Brighton, and that was a result that could have gone either way. So I think they're 15th in the home league table, which is really, really poor. I mean, the good news for them is they're playing the worst team in the country, right, this weekend. So I'm going to say it. Look, I think Sheffield United, by the way, have got more of a chance of staying up now than they had with Paul Heckingbottom because Chris Wilder is a galvanising, encouraging figure as opposed to Paul Heckingbottom, who looked like he wished they never got promoted because he'd still be in a job. So I still think there's very little chance. I'd put them from 0% to 1%, which is still almost no chance. How's this game going to go? Well, look, you've got to go conservative here because, look, the Chelsea to win odds are pitiful. That's pitiful for a team that have won 2 games at home all season and are sitting 12th in the Premier League. The reason those odds are so low is because they're the name Chelsea. If the name was Brentford, they'd be 2.88. Yeah, I mean, significantly higher, double, I would say. So 2.6, something like that. Go Chelsea win, only because Sheffield United are not going to win here, though might be quite funny to put a fiver on 14s and see what happens. But look, realistically, Chelsea are going to win this game. I don't think it'll be a thrashing, even though Sheffield United have got that awful defensive record, 41 goals conceded. I'd be looking here at Chelsea win and go on the under 2.5. That's a 1-0. That's a 2-0. That's an unmemorable victory for Chelsea. It brings you over the threshold. It bumps up your money significantly from pitiful Chelsea to win odds. And as you know, I always like a group bet. I always think they come in more often than not. 1-0, 2-0, 2-1, 2.88. It makes the odds slightly better, but conservative Chelsea victories until they do something impressive. And they've not done anything impressive now in 16 weeks.
Indeed, perhaps the draw against Man City was the best thing they've done this season. The value is good for the draw. Tyson is telling us most of the people don't trust Chelsea, obviously. Halftime draw for Anurag, double chance at halftime for Carbon. This is the mood on Chelsea. So bad this season for Chelsea. Next game is Man City Crystal Palace. The good news for Man City, I think, was in the Champions League game where they put a lot of academy players and they did a good job getting all the victories in the Champions League, but in the Premier League they are struggling lately, even against Luton Town. After this game they go to the FIFA World Cup club, so it's important for them. Luckily they have kind of an easy schedule during Christmas because they have a lot of games, it's fair to say, because Palace, for instance, this should be an easy victory. They are in a bad place, especially away from home. They are not very competitive.
Yeah, and I saw something the other day from Opta, the stats gurus, which said that City have statistically the easiest run over Christmas in terms of caliber of opponent and the amount of home games they're playing away, all of that. They have the easiest run of games, though, of course, they are going out to the silly Infantino competition in the semi-final stage next week. Terrific. They're playing, I don't know who they're playing. Does it matter? So they're going out to that. So that also will help as well, because I don't think Guardiola's going to play. He might even leave a lot of his senior players on the bench for a lot of those games, because I'm not sure how much they're going to care about it or how difficult they're going to find it. Look, this game should be an easy win. I think 1 win in 5 makes us doubt Man City a little bit. But actually, what's been extraordinary about this run for Man City is that they've not even been struggling with injuries. Away from Kevin De Bruyne, everyone's kind of been fit. And you might say, what about Haaland? Yeah, but he's played all but, I think, last week's game. And they've still had, Alvarez and all these brilliant players they've got. So even 1 or 2 injuries, it's not like Chelsea or United where they've had 10, 11, 12. Newcastle, for example. It's almost fully fit squad. So that's been the surprise, that they've just sort of taken their eye off the ball a bit. But I think they return to winning ways here quite comfortably, mainly because of the ills of Crystal Palace. And they're in a bit of a death spiral right now, Crystal Palace. And I think that Roy Hodgson's utter misery in his post-match interviews following the loss against Liverpool last week suggested that he's ready for retirement. They're ready to move on, but no one knows what to do next. If Steve Cooper of Nottingham Forest is your answer, you might be asking the wrong questions, I would suggest. Just a note of some of the players that are out for Crystal Palace who do have an injury crisis. Check Doucouré, who for me is their most important player in central midfield, is missing. Ebere Eze remains out. I think he'll be out till after Christmas. Jordan Ayew is suspended. Sam Johnston and Dean Henderson both missing. So it's third choice goalkeeper time for City this week, who came on last week. So really significant players missing for Palace, who have won this fixture impressively in recent years, but this ain't one of those years. Odds are terrible for City, so you've got to go handicap. Look at -2. Stay conservative. That brings you at 2.38. I might look at higher. I do think -2.5 will bring you some money. You might want to look at -3.5 here, only because that brings you above the threshold. Me personally, I'm staying conservative because of the way games have gone for City recently, but -2.5 is it's still under what I would like. City to win to nil brings you at 1.91. I think they'll win 3 or 4-0, frankly, so still too conservative. City win both halves, also not great, 2.25. So there's not a great deal of value here unless you think City are going to win 5-0. If you do, the odds are all there for you. You'll get above the threshold, but this is one for your accumulator and it's one for your safe bet. It's not one for the rest of the market for me.
Indeed, some people were asking you if you see trouble for Man City in this game. The answer is no. As you can tell, Mustafa is going for halftime Palace, full-time City. This is interesting. For sure, you will have really good odds if City starts from behind or wins from behind this game. By the way, if you want to bet on Man City to win the Premier League, it's that time. The odds are higher than ever. It's 1.9. right now for Man City to win the Premier League, despite all the... Well, even Guardiola is saying that they are going to win the Premier League. He's still optimistic despite the last results. Well, next game is Newcastle Fulham. Very interesting because we have Newcastle in bad form. They have a lot of injuries, as we all know, and they are losing games. They are out of European competitions, as we said at the beginning of the video. Lost to Tottenham, lost to Everton, but at home they are very strong. They've won every game except Liverpool in the Premier League, whereas Fulham, Tom, they are surprising us because we've been saying the whole season that they don't have firepower after Mitrovic left, but they scored 5 against West Ham, 5 against Forest, 3 against Liverpool and Wolves. So suddenly they found the net very easily.
Yeah, they have. And we'll certainly talk about them in a second. With Newcastle, it's really interesting, this, because you mentioned their home form, which has been very good this season, even with the injuries they have had and the problems they have had and the schedule. They've won 7 of 8 with 19 goals scored and 4 conceded. That is unbelievably formidable form. If they had anywhere near last season's away form, they'd be running away with the Premier League. So, we've slept a bit on Fulham scoring goals the last 3 or 4 weeks. I think we're also sleeping on how good Newcastle have been at home this season. The injuries remain. Sandro Tonali, Nick Pope, Jacob Murphy, Elliot Anderson, Sven Botman, Joe Willock, Harvey Barnes. Kieran Trippier is going to be suspended for this one for 5 yellow cards. Javier Manquillo and Matt Targett missing as well. So it's a huge list of players unavailable for Newcastle United as ever, though I still think the first team they can put out is pretty strong. Plus, they have the Isak Wilson switchover back available for them again, which I think paid a lot of dividends in the early weeks of the season. So I'd still make Newcastle favourites, as the bookies understandably do. For Fulham, I think we were right all season to pick out the issue with scoring goals. I think it's changed in the last 4 to 5 weeks. When the facts change, we can change our opinions and certainly change our bets. And I'm so happy for Raul Jimenez. I got to say, I'm so happy for him because brilliant footballer, such a great striker, a 60, 70 million pound striker 3 or 4 years ago, gets that horrible injury and it never looked like it was going to happen for him. And then he scores those 2 brilliant goals against Nottingham Forest, and suddenly the old guy's back. And I think we saw that against West Ham last week. Look, perfect time to play West Ham. Virus going through the camp. Huge game for them on the Thursday night, 24 hours after Fulham. Plus, they played like 10 or so games more than Fulham this season. So it was perfect. And you could see West Ham look out on their feet as the game kicked off. So, look, I will give them some excuses there, West Ham. But Fulham certainly took full advantage and scored some brilliant goals. The Harry Wilson one, it's also staggeringly good. So, more power to them for scoring 10 goals in 2 games. But away from home, 9 goals scored, 1 win all season, 2 points in the last 5. I want to give Fulham some respect here for their last couple of weeks, but they ain't going to win here. So Newcastle win this match. Look at some of the tight victories this season they have picked up at home. Think more about the game against Man United, against Arsenal, than the one against Chelsea. I think they win this reasonably comfortably, but not without or not scoring lots of goals, right? So Newcastle win under 2.5 goals in this match. That brings you in at 5. That's a huge jump from the 1.87 you're getting just for Newcastle to win. 1-0 or 2-0. Got to see that, right? That's a huge jump there. That's what I'm taking this weekend. I also wouldn't be surprised to see Fulham get 1 and Newcastle to score 2. That brings you in at 3.25. Both teams score under 3.5 goals. There's ways to work that bet, but that's the way I've worked it to get us above the threshold. 2-1 to Newcastle. It also comes into your group bet as well. 1-0, 2-0, 2-1. Again, brings you over that threshold. And I will just mention, it doesn't scream it, but I will just mention the draw at 4. I fancy Newcastle to win a low-scoring match, right? That's what I think is going to happen. The form tells me that. Newcastle's results after Europe tells me that. Their overall season form tells me that. Fulham's overall season away form tells me that. It all points to 1-0 or 2-0 to Newcastle. But draw at 4 is not one I would sleep on, only because of what happened in midweek. Perhaps an unexpected deflation of Newcastle United. I just would sprinkle it in there. If you don't fancy a Newcastle win as I do, don't go Fulham, take the draw.
Well, many people are taking Fulham, actually. They see an upset in this game in St. James's Park. Amazing value for the draw. For instance, Viper and Viper is telling us Mustafa, Tom will back Newcastle every week till they win finally. Well, they've won all the games at home in the Premier League, except that unlucky game, we have to say, against Liverpool. Johannes Newcastle to win 2-0. Tricky one, this one for Newcastle. And still we have one more game on Saturday, is Burnley. Everton hitting great form for Everton. Probably the numbers are even European numbers. 6 victories in 9 games, 4 wins in 5 games, beating Chelsea, as you said in the last game. Their form is really, really good, and they can put even more distance with the relegation zone if they beat Burnley, which they are favorites to do it. And the odds are not bad to back again Everton with 2.2 actually.
Yeah, across the season, without the points deduction, Everton would sit 10th, and they'd be in that conversation with Fulham, West Ham, Brighton, Newcastle, Man Utd, Tottenham. Can any of those teams have a push for the top 4, top 7, the European football places? Unfortunately, Newcastle and Man United have screwed us on the coefficient, so 8th is probably not going to get you European football this year, but top 7 still will, and that's plenty of spaces to be played for. Look, in terms of Burnley, really briefly on them, the home form remains pretty pitiful still. I know they beat Sheffield United 5-0, but look across the season at all the actual Premier League teams they've faced. They lost to every single one of them with 20 goals conceded. I wasn't impressed particularly by the Sheffield United victory, only because the Blades had been so poor. And I still think Burnley are going to fly down with less than 20 points. And a quick note as well, I think their best player this season has been Luka Koleosho, and he's going to miss probably the rest of this season with a knee injury picked up over the last couple of weeks. A huge loss for Burnley with a player I think is really, really good and has got a big Premier League or at least top-level career ahead of him. So that's a real shame for them. For Everton, I'll just mention there's no Jared Branthwaite and no Idrissa Gana suspended for this game. Branthwaite has been brilliant in central defence in the last couple of weeks. So it's going to require one of the backup players, someone like Ben Godfrey or Michael Keane, to come in, which could potentially be a variable there. But look, Everton are going to win this game. I think that away form has been staggeringly good this season. Deduction or no deduction, 4 victories from 7 is extraordinary. They're doing the Sean Dyche thing, right? This is what Burnley used to do to teams in their pomp, Burnley, when they finished, I think 8th or 9th a couple of seasons in the Premier League. They would come to your ground, destroy the game and nick the win. And that's exactly what Everton are doing. I still don't think they're particularly strong on the eye, but the energy, the power of Everton at this moment in time is rolling over mid-table teams. They rolled over Nottingham Forest, despite it only being 1-0. They rolled over West Ham, again, despite it only being 1-0. Same against Brentford, same against Palace. They're too strong, they're too powerful, they're too confident. And Abdoulaye Doucouré, by the way, flag him up. I think it's 11 goals in 31 games. Really good record right now. If you're looking for any-time goal scorers this weekend, Doucouré is right up there with the top picks. How do Everton win this? I think you look at 2 of the results I mentioned there. 1-0 victories away from home against half-decent football teams, West Ham and Nottingham Forest. Everton win without conceding brings you in at 3.5. Really, really like that. Take that to the bank. I think that's going to happen. Absolutely, just Everton to win. Certainly in an accumulator is a real good tip this weekend too. So Everton just straight up win. Slightly under what we want, but I still think that's worth taking. It's certainly in a selection of bets. Everton win to 3.5. Everton win and under 3.5 goals as well. Again, look at those games. 1-0s, 2-0s, even a 3-0 this will give you. I can't see Burnley scoring. I do see Everton scoring 2.75. All sorts of low-scoring, comfortable Everton wins.
All right, Con is telling us poetic justice, Dyche to conquer Burnley. Well, let's see. Anurag is going against the trend. Actually, Burnley 3.8 looks delicious, but the normal thing is Everton to win, to be honest. Let's jump into the games we have on Sunday. Arsenal-Brighton is the first one, really good one. Arsenal, after losing the leadership, losing to Aston Villa, very angry with the referees. Perhaps they have reasons to be angry. Luckily for Arteta, he could rest some players against PSV in the Champions League, and they have a really challenging calendar ahead of Christmas compared to Man City, for instance. This game is very dangerous against Brighton. Then they have Liverpool or West Ham. So very tricky schedule for Arsenal.
And this game is very tough. And very tough to predict as well. Look, Arsenal's home form has been really good this season. 6 victories in 8, 20 goals scored, 8 conceded. It's worth noting in the last 5, in 3 of those, both teams have scored. So they're playing Brighton. Guess what the bet's going to be for this one? Every single game this season, both teams have scored. So in all scenarios here, you look both teams to score. Arsenal, I think, are in a really tricky position at the moment because the Champions League run has come to its end in terms of they're through, they've won the group, there's nothing difficult for them now coming up in March. I think full focus now on this run. If they're going to be champions this year, I think they have to win every single game until the end of February. That's 6, maybe 7 games. Dismiss the FA Cup. Don't worry about that. And I just wonder whether they're going to be up to doing it. That's the big question for me with Arsenal. Are they going to be able to win games like this? Are they going to go to West Ham and win a couple of days after Christmas, depending on how West Ham are? West Ham plays so many games, you never know what you're going to get from the Hammers. So I think you look at the way Arsenal win this game is by outscoring the opponent. You look at that in games like Wolverhampton Wanderers. You look at it in the Burnley match. You look at it in a lot of the games at home this season, even the Luton away game. So I think you look at Arsenal having to score at least 2 goals in this game to win it. Not many significant injuries for Arsenal as well. So a pretty strong squad for them. There's some talk that Martinelli might be ill, but I think he'll come back from it. Beyond that, it's the strongest available team that went into Luton a couple of weeks ago. For Brighton, the injuries are starting to clear up, but still no Ansu Fati, still no Enciso, still no Danny Welbeck, still no Adam Webster or Solly March. So it's weak compared to their strongest, but it's better than it has been over the last 3 to 5 weeks. Look at the away form as well for Brighton. It's not as good as you kind of think it is, even though they've scored in every single game. It's 1 win in their last 5, and they're throwing results away. They should have beaten Chelsea in the last game and didn't do so. So look at the overs here. Over 2.5 goals in the game. Look at both teams to score. The winner will be Arsenal. 1.5 is useless to you. So Arsenal win and both teams score brings you in at 3. And look at over 2.5, over 3.5. Look at goals in both halves. Look at both teams to score in both halves. Look at halftime Arsenal winning, full-time Arsenal winning. They're going to have to score to win this game. So all sorts of overs.
All right, you've convinced me to watch this game. We should see a lot of goals. Only the both teams to score, as we can see right now, was 1.8. Now we can see again the both teams to score 1.8. Really good odds. Now Bill is telling us that I fancy Arsenal here, but and of course Brighton, they are playing Europa League. They have to fight for the first spot in the Europa League. This is a good point. Also playing 2 days later, Arsenal to win and both teams to score for Johannes. Really good game. This one, Arsenal Brighton, also interesting one. Brentford Aston Villa, after beating Arsenal and City in only 1 week at home, they have to go away and win in Brentford, which is a very tricky ground to win, even if Brentford, they are not in great form. We had some question before, Tom, about Aston Villa, if they could be the new Newcastle this season and fight for the top 4. I guess they could.
Well, they are. I mean, they are at the moment. You can't discount that. And I think that it's been surprising, and I wouldn't suggest it's going to be easy for them. I think, teams like Man U and Tottenham and 1 or 2 others will improve as the season goes on. And Aston Villa have A, got to keep up the home form, and B, got to start winning more away games. If they do that, I think the top 4 is a distinct possibility. And if they do that, they may well have a title run as well. Look, it's not impossible. I don't think they're the favourites to win the league, and I'm not putting my money on it. But if you can win 8 of 8 at home and beat City and Arsenal in the process, then you're in the title race. That's the way it goes. It's games like this that will decide whether they can do that and indeed challenge for top 4 as well. So I don't know what you get them title odds now, but it might be worth a little tickle.
And for this game, how you see it? We have Mom's Spaghetti going for Brentford, for instance. Asian Handicap 0 is a tricky one. Aston Villa's form away is not bad, but 3 victories, 3 defeats. How do you see this one?
It's awful, this one. It's awful because, Brentford are one of those teams that continually overperform expectation. So many players missing now. And there's talk that Brian Mbeumo is going to be missing for this game. That's a huge loss considering Tony is out as well for another month until he returns from his ban. There's no Aya, there's no Shade, there's no Collins probably. It looks like he's going to be out for a little while longer. Matthias Jensen. I mean, a lot of the first team is missing, and the first team overperforms its abilities on a regular basis. So it's a really good time to play Brentford, though their home form is 3 wins in the last 4. That's pretty impressive. Though I think they've got a lot of luck, certainly in that West Ham game and against Luton Town as well to win those games by the scorelines they did. You're right to pick out Villa's form away from home. It's good, but it's not particularly impressive. It's not a title-winning set of away results. It's 2 wins in the last 5 and a couple of games where, the draw they got against Bournemouth, they probably should have lost that. The draw against Wolves, they probably should have lost that. Didn't play particularly well, so it's a huge test. Screams draw to me, frankly. 3.85. I think low-scoring or high-scoring draw, all sorts of draw. It comes to mind. I think 1-1 is the most likely scoreline. Looking at Villa's recent away games, it looks a lot like the Wolverhampton Wanderers game, a lot like the Bournemouth game. I think Brentford will overperform. Villa may well underperform. And there's a great group bet here, which I really like, and it's the draw group bet. 1-1, 2-2, 3-3, 4.5. Really, really nice. Covers your backside on all sorts of draw results, just above the 3.6 as well, which is more broad, but these are the draws. Right, I think both teams are going to score in this match. If you are going to pick a winner, go for Villa. Villa to win and both teams to score is 3.75. They are the more likely of the teams to win in terms of quality and overall form. But I think draw and both teams score is the outcome here.
Well, we have Hussein going for a draw, Adam for a draw as well, Johannes. So most of our audience are going for a draw. Viper, Villa double chance as kind of a safe bet. Only Carbon is trusting Aston Villa to win. Well, next game perhaps also smells like a draw. West Ham Wolves, our tool in the Oddspedia website, points out this game to be very good for both teams to score. A lot of chances for both teams to score. 81% chances. The tool says 1.78 is both teams to score. Very difficult to predict this West Ham, as you were saying in this show. It's kind of the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde with so many games, and Wolves still very reliable, we have to say, but away from home, they weren't able to beat Forest or Burnley recently, for instance.
I don't know if our viewers have lost their hearing in the last 30 seconds during your intro there, but it's the sound of a game screaming draw so loudly that it's almost impossible to hear anything else being said. The draw in this game is 3.68. Take it and run home with it. The draw on both teams to score, you mentioned it there. It screams both teams to score, brings you in at 4.33. Just a 1-1 draw on its own brings you in at 6.5, which I think is extraordinary. That, to me, is the most likely outcome. Why? Look, West Ham have got really good players and a really competent manager, but I think you've seen this with West Ham now for so long. The manager is uber cautious. He is uber cautious, and the players do not sprint very much. He wants these players to be able to play every single game, and their energy intentionally remains quite low. They do almost nothing until the 85th minute in matches. They try and keep the game level and try and win it at the end. Because I don't think David Moyes thinks his players can play at like a Brighton pelt in matches, and he's right. And sometimes it's very difficult to watch West Ham because you feel like they're not trying enough. They don't. They're the only team in the country who don't try and score at home in the opening 25 minutes. They just don't do it. And it's really difficult to watch. And I think the home form this season is what's let West Ham down. Their away form has actually been pretty decent overall. Just 3 home victories, simply not good enough. And not beating Newcastle and not beating Crystal Palace and the loss against Everton in the last 5. It's what stopped West Ham challenging for the top 6, which is where they probably think they should be. And I'd agree with that. So we don't know about the Freiburg game in midweek as well in the Europa League as we record this. It's a huge game for West Ham. If they've won it, it means they don't play until the round of 16 in the Europa League. If they've not, they go into a playoff against one of the Champions League teams. That changes a lot about the season. It's 2 further games, could get a real tough opponent. I know West Ham want to win the Europa League this year. It's a real target for them. And they feel like they can. So a lot of focus will go on that. Plus, last week against Fulham, there is a virus in the camp. And I think that is not just an excuse. It's a thing that's happening at West Ham right now. Lots of players are unwell. And it was one game too many for them. The schedule is so unkind to West Ham. And they don't moan about it a great deal. But you think about Fulham, they had the night before against Nottingham Forest, so an extra 24 hours rest. West Ham are away at Tottenham, one of the hardest places to go without the ball. Then there's a virus, and then they go to Fulham, who are free scoring. And they just looked exhausted, tired, mentally and physically. And I think that led to that result. They play that game another point in the season, I think West Ham do get a victory in that game last week and aren't thrashed 5-0. So a lot of mitigating circumstances. It's going to be a tough watch, this, though. Look, Wolverhampton Wanderers are a good team, if not a great team. One away win the last 5, as you mentioned, is simply not good enough. I think they will score in this game. I don't see them winning. I think Gary O'Neill and David Moyes would happily shake hands on a draw here. So I've given my bets already. Draw, both teams score. That's 1-1. Draw at 3.4. Take that. 1-1 draw specifically is 6.5. If you do fancy West Ham, I personally don't. If you do, I think they're the most likely winners. It'd be a late squeaker. 1-0, 2-0, 2-1, group bet, 3.25. But it's going to be a draw.
Screams 1-1. Indeed, West Ham, they are playing on Thursday against Freiburg, and they need to win this one to play to be first of the group and not to play playoff against the Champions League teams, drop into the Europa League. More chances, by the way, Tom, for West Ham to win the Europa League since Sevilla is not there. So a lot of teams have a lot of chances.
The only team who knocked out Sevilla in the last 3 Europa Leagues were the Old Hammers. So, we're not afraid of Sevilla.
Yeah. I remember that game. Actually, Sevilla was so poor away from home and very defensively. Well, last game, best game, of course, in the weekend, Liverpool, Man United. Everyone wants to watch this game. We already have Spaghetti telling us Liverpool Asian handicap -4. -4. Perhaps you are being a bit short, Spaghetti, because last season was a 7-0, as we all know, and Man United keep losing games, and it's not losing already 7 defeats this season in the Premier League. Is the way of losing, because against Bayern Munich they didn't even raise a glove. They didn't even try. Not I think was one shot on target against Bayern Munich, a game that they had to win. With Liverpool on top of the table, their home form is amazing. They are winning every game at Anfield. I guess we should expect a lot of goals and Liverpool to win. Actually, 1.42 doesn't sound that bad if you Asian handicap like 1.5, something like this.
You're going to need to Asian handicap here if you're going to get any money out of this game. Look, Liverpool have sort of gone top of the league by stealth in the last few weeks. They were not good against Crystal Palace last week. They were not good in the game against Sheffield United in midweek, and they haven't played particularly well for long stretches of this season. They weren't great in the 4-3 victory over Fulham, where it took an Anfield moment for them to win that game. So it's really interesting. They're playing nowhere near their best, but at top of the league and have won 7 of 7 at home. In terms of Manchester United, it was awful against Bayern Munich in midweek. They are in a crisis of sorts. Look, I think no one thought they were going to win the league and no one thought they were going to win the Champions League. No one thought they'd finish bottom of their Champions League group either. But all in all, they have a mid-table squad with a long injury list and a mid-table maybe punching their weight right now. Not punching the weight of the name, but punching the weight of the quality of player they have available to them. So I'm not sure it's as big a crisis as we all think it is. And if this was Everton, I think we'd be a bit like, yeah, seems about right. And I'm not sure too many of these players would get into the Everton team the way things currently are. So that's the where we are at the moment with Manchester United. Still a long injury list. Malacia, Casemiro, Martinez, Ericsson, Bruno Fernandes suspended for this game for his booking in the last match. No Mason Mount, who I forgot existed. Victor Lindelof, Jadon Sancho, Amad Diallo. Maguire looks like he's out. There's doubts about Luke Shaw as well. So,
oh my God.
Look, what can you say? Look, it's going to be a win for Liverpool here. I can't see any scenario that Manchester United do win. -2 handicap brings you at 3.5. It's conservative, but brings you above the threshold we are looking at. I know it was 7-0 last year, but I don't know. I can't see it. I really can't. I think they might cap it off at 5. I would say this is going to be a 3-4 or 5-0 win. So look at those handicaps. -2, -3, even what our friend said, -4. I wouldn't discard it because that's the only way you're going to make money. Liverpool win to 0 is 3.25. I like this because it covers a lot of sins, a lot of bets, plus it gives you your double your money, which we like. We always aim for that. Liverpool win both halves. Also brings you in above the 3 threshold, 3.25. But look, all sorts of Asian handicaps. I wouldn't predict a -4, right? Because I think that's up to you viewing this if you want to do something wild. I personally think this is going to finish 3 or 4-0. That's what I'd be looking at here. So try and make bets work around that scoreline, which I've done. If you want to go -3.5, absolutely have at it. But for me, -2.5 and a couple of winter nils.
Indeed, Liverpool's defense is not the best, so perhaps Man United can sneak a goal. For instance, Mustafa thinks Ten Hag to score, probably to score something else at home, but not at Anfield. Liverpool smells United blood after Champions League failure, and some of our audience are going for a close victory for Liverpool. They think Man United will lose, but not heavily. Could be. Well, Tom, our time is over. Let's see your safe bet.
Safe bet this week is Manchester City to beat Crystal Palace at home. City win.
And Liverpool to win could be another good one, by the way. And your ACCA?
A 3-team ACCA this week. I'm not putting City in it because they're such massive favourites. It doesn't change your odds, so take that variable out. Brings you in at 4.9 this when I last checked it. Tottenham Hotspur, Liverpool and Everton to win. Tottenham will win at Nottingham Forest, Liverpool over Manchester United, and you've got to back Everton right now in the form they have been in. 4.9, very nice.
Great, Tom. Thank you very much for your tips and all your knowledge. I'm sure you will keep a close eye on the FIFA World Cup. I think Alvaro, for instance, was watching yesterday Benzema winning with his Arabian team Al something. I forgot about the Al whatever of Benzema's team. Thank you, Tom. Thanks everyone for watching. Next week we are back. We have more Premier League, of course, during Christmas. Bye bye.